Welcome back to Freedom Algo. Today was a very whipsaw type day. It's October 18th, 2024. This is going to be the price action chart lesson. Now, what you can see here is a big range. Zoom out a little bit. You can see that there was the overnight close was this dotted line here. Yesterday's close that we never hit during the regular session was still back here. Now, we did hit it in the overnight. It spiked down and then reversed. So we kind of had that working for us. But I still was thinking we might come down and tap it, but it's just got this little bit of a bullish bias. And you can see that even though this is a range, there's a slightly bullish bias here. We never really, like after this low, we came down here and we tapped the close, but then after that, it's a higher low here, another higher low here, another higher low here, another higher low here. I wouldn't really say that like we have any sort of a real trend line here. I don't believe that there was a channel that was really fitting. You can see that it just doesn't really fit anyway when you try to draw it. It doesn't match. There's just too many breaks. I mean, I guess you could draw it off of there and say that you haven't really come back to it. But overall, I mean, it does fit pretty nicely like that with maybe this right here being an overshoot. But it's just not great. Doesn't really fit that well. I mean, I guess you could, if you wanted to argue for it, say that there possibly is a trend channel like this, but it doesn't really work. I mean, it breaks and then gives you, you know, some sort of new high, but I just don't really like it. I just don't think it's fitting very well. To me, it's just a range day. We already tapped up here. We tapped up here. It looks like we might come up and get some sort of a triple test type of situation up here. So we'll see if that ends up playing out. But for now, it's basically looking like just a very mixed trading day. Now, the better trades happened really early. So I'm going to go over those and just kind of show you. We had this channel working up early. I had a tighter channel that had a break and a new high, but then this channel was really a two-tiered channel. It broke here and it gave us kind of a couple legs to a new high. You could kind of look at it sort of like this, leg one, leg two, and it's almost a perfect spot. It went just very slightly higher, but it's basically perfect two legs up. The second leg kind of had two legs in it because it kind of went up and pulled back, but so did the first one. It went up, pulled back, went up, and then this next one went up, pulled back, went up. So you can kind of argue for however you want to look at it, but in reality, it was basically, it plays out. So I should have actually drawn this. I forgot to put you could put a green arrow here. This is aggressive because this is like only a few minutes, like about 5 minutes before the open. You could argue that there's a reason to take a short here. Now, you would have had to be careful though, because in reality here, it was starting to look like this. And so you had to consider that this really wasn't broken yet. Now, this was just the retest, but it's risky. It's far away from the EMA though. You know, looking at yesterday's levels, it was kind of coming up towards these lows and looking like it was maybe going to reject this kind of previous range. This white line is just the high of the day. I just kind of drew that, the high of the overnight, right before the open. So you could argue though, because it is two legs. I didn't draw it or I didn't take the trade, but I saw it in real time and I was tempted. I chose to stay away though because we were about to open. And the better trades happened right afterwards anyway. I mean, that trade would have been nice. You would have got a nice little quick runner there. But the better trades for me came up after the fact. Now, unfortunately, you didn't get a lot of runners today. Today was kind of a whipsaw type day where you probably just got your scalps, and my runners kept getting stopped at around break even. It just depended on how you played them, but you couldn't really take much runners today unless you got into a couple of these. So I think as I go through, I think almost none of the trades give you a runner. Yeah, pretty much none. I mean, I guess like over here, it's not really a runner, but you could have taken a little bit larger profit on some of them, but there was no real runners that gave you like several points. So what you got after this, you had this tight downtrend working from this high up here. It comes down, it closes outside and gives you a new low and closes outside of this tight channel all at once. So the reason it's a little risky because it's just a first entry long when it does that. There's not really anything else here. It's just a first entry long, but there's reasons to like it because at this point, it's just you're expecting that you could, if that channel was intact, if this was actually another channel that was playing out, which it kind of does look like one. It almost looks like, there was a few ways that you could have looked at this. You could have also said that there was sort of a wider, kind of like a spike in channel that looked something like this from that early spike and then a channel. So there's a couple reasons to think that we might come up and tap the highs again. And so that one was decent. And then also but it's still, again, it's just the first entry. It's a little risky. You might get another leg down. I did like this one. I considered this a very good trade. And again, blue arrows are good longs. Red arrows are good shorts. Green arrows up and down are, still good longs and shorts, but not as great of a setup. So they're a little riskier, a little bit more advanced. So what I got here was, let me scroll in a little bit more, just so that a little bit bigger on the screen there. Hopefully that's a little bit better. So you come down, you have this move up, pull back. This is a higher low that's also a second entry. And so I liked this one as, hey, maybe this channel is going to get tapped for a new high. Again, it might just be the play out of this, so you really might not get it. So it was a little bit questionable, but it ends up working out really quickly. You barely take any heat. You basically get in and it just fills you real quick. It's a quick little scalp. Now, if you're quick enough, you could have also taken the short here because there's reasons to think that this channel is not even realistic because it was the play out of this one. And so if that's the case and you're seeing it that way, then basically this gives you a double top lower high setup. So I wouldn't have taken this lower high right here, even though it worked, just because, again, you weren't sure. It's right around the open. It's a little whippy there. You're going right into the EMA. You don't know if it's going to bounce here and try to give you that high, which it ends up doing. So what you end up getting here, though, is a first entry, second entry short. Now, the second entry short technically is below this one. I can't remember in real time. I think what it did was this one closed. I think this one opened. Now, if I remember correctly, this one opened, went up, and then reversed and gave you this nice, short, if I remember correctly. But anyway, it was an easy trade to get into if you played it right, and you even had some room on this candle here that gave you another spot where you could enter if you didn't get filled on your stop order. So anyway, first entry, it's a second entry short, triggering below this bar, but this is an engulfing one that goes up and basically traps all the longs. So I like it as a trap, and I like it as a failed second entry short that's a trap. So basically, that's how I played that one. Technically, the failed second entry short triggers below this one, but again, that's kind of a doji. And so this one, for me, you had to wait for this bar to close because it's that engulfing style. It's just way bigger than the other bar. So I waited for that to close and then entered it, and I thought that was a great play. So then this one, unfortunately, you most likely don't get a runner here. It does come back. I don't know. Let's see. Maybe you get it. Maybe you get a runner there. I don't remember. I think it came back and yeah, I think it did on this one. It came back and stopped the break even. I remember not getting a runner there. Okay, so anyway, it runs down, and you end up in this really tight channel. Now this ends up being one of those tight channels where you're going towards the close with aggression, and so basically, what every time, dude, things try to move on me. Um, I think I had it drawn. Basically, it was something like that. Basically, it tried to move on me again. All right, it was something like that. Anyway, every time that you're basically coming back to the trend line and getting a bearish candle, you could probably enter a short here. Now you have to know what you're doing because you're shorting into the lows. You're not getting like a serious pullback. But the way I was looking at this was, okay, we're probably coming down to test at least yesterday's close. And so when we got this one, and that's why they're all greens, because you are shorting into a low in the regular session, but you have a lot of room from this other area to where you had previous overnight price action, and you're expecting to come back, and you end up coming right to it, right to yesterday's close. So I liked each one of these as a short scalp. Now again, you're not trying to get runners on those. You're just taking your few ticks and going. The way I play these when I'm trading like this is I take my 4 ticks and I move my stop to break even for my runner. And then sometimes I will let the runner try to play out and I'll just move my stop really close. And like maybe I'll take only like a tick or two when it comes back, something like that, because you're shorting the lows, so you need to be really tight. Okay, so then it ends up just reversing here, and you don't get a new low on this channel. It doesn't break outside and give you a new low. It doesn't even really try. There's no even attempt to swing lower here. These are all matching lows until all the way up here. Um, and so eventually, this was a tempting area for a second entry short because this is a new low, and this all comes up, gives you a first entry short, second entry short, and I really wanted to short here, but I just didn't get a good signal bar. I ended up with two dojis, so you just couldn't take a short there, unfortunately. However, you do get a setup here because after that plays out a little bit, you technically get a trap right here. And so usually on these types of traps, what I really want to have happen is I want this bar to be more like of a solid green or something like that, like some sort of a bar that's going to show you that there's an engulfing trap. But the way that this one played out for me was like this. First entry, second entry short, pull back, lower high from up here. So like it wasn't going to break out and make an attempt higher. And I was thinking at this point, this channel was going to try to make an attempt to these lows. So there was some bearish momentum in play here that I wasn't really expecting that we were going to break this up channel and make a new high. I was expecting the more likely is that we make a new low from this tight channel down, and that maybe that gives us our attempt to come down to this close from yesterday that we never filled yesterday during the regular session. So what ends up happening though is that it comes up. Now this one I did enter engulfing bar style. So it's a little more advanced because of the way that this one's set up. There's a little bit of risk there, but I wasn't going to wait for this whole thing to close. 17 tick bar on a pretty tight day, and I wasn't going to short there. That's just too far away. It would have worked, but again, I would have said that this one works as an engulfing bar trap if you saw it as a trap. And that's how I saw it. I saw this as a pullback that's basically stopped everybody who thought this was a bullish move. Everyone got long on that first entry right there, thinking, okay, we're bouncing off the EMA. And they all got long and they all just got trapped and immediately had to exit. So that's how I played that one. And it was quick. I mean, basically, as soon as I got tapped in, boom, got my profit filled. Okay, then that one breaks out of this level. And let's see here. So this one comes out. You have this up channel working, nothing really that convincing. Now you end up not making a new low again. So this point, that's when I started to think, okay, there is definitely a bullish bias here, because now it's a higher low every time and you're just not coming back down. So after this break here, you make a new high up here. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I mean, you could argue here that there's a first entry, second entry short, but again, not bearish enough. So, and it is a higher high than this high. So there's really no reason to really take a short there. Unfortunately, you just kind of have to sit out for a lot of this move right here. And then it breaks down into this channel. And then I like this one here. At this point, I didn't have the range drawn yet, but I had this midline, and I noticed that the midline was in play. We were spending a decent amount of time near the midline, and I was expecting at least a low on this channel, and still expecting the low on this channel, but it ends up not happening over here. So then I just was only looking at the short terms. And so what I ended up with was this down channel, a break right here, close outside. And what you actually get here is this is a little more advanced as well, because you actually get a first entry that then pulls back and gives you a second entry long that actually fails. So this becomes a failed second entry long. It's hard to see it because of the way that this played out, but this is actually a failed second entry long, and it's also a first entry, second entry short. So this is a second entry short. That's a really bearish bar and a failed second entry long again. So that one was a nice, easy one for me. You already did make the new low technically, but still you were thinking, hey, possibly lows from here, maybe a tap of the midline. It ends up just tapping the midline. So then at this point, we're not really convincingly going to go lower, and you can see we reject again here. So I drew this channel. Actually, at the time, I think I had it drawn up here. I had it drawn like this originally. And so when we came up here, I took a short there. And the reason I like that one was another one of these where I just saw this one as basically just a failed breakout. There's not really much to that one. It's just a possible failed breakout of the top. And so there, there's not a ton there. You can kind of call it like a first test, second test. You can kind of look at it as a triple test. It is higher though, but it's a nice rejection bar. There's a few ways to look at this. You could also see the double bottom, and you can see this as a pullback, first entry, pullback, second entry short. So it's technically a second entry short. Again, it's kind of a range. And then eventually this came down and it closed on the midline. So I moved this down and said, okay, the midline is definitely in play. And so I had this looking like this. We break out of this, and so we get a lower low right here. This is actually technically a little lower, and a close outside. So this down channel played out. So that closed outside. Now I don't. That's too big for me to take on a day like today. It's a 15 tick bar. So even though I was hoping that actually this would give me a bullish close, like a little bit lower, and then a bullish close, so I could see it as a failed break from the low side and take it. But I didn't want to enter this on here. I mean, technically you could probably argue for it. There is room to the range highs. Maybe I'll just put a green arrow there. I didn't take it. You could also have waited. I don't know if it broke higher and then reversed, and you could have maybe entered on a limit order further back. Possibility, but I didn't love it. I just thought it was too big and a little risky. Just wasn't worth it to me with how choppy it was. And so then anyway, it comes up. You got to close outside here, move to a new high. And I did take this short right here. Even though it's marked green, I thought that it was a nice setup. It's a little more advanced because you're better off to wait for a lower high, but you don't always get one. And I saw this as a failed breakout. So what I did at this point was I actually looked at this as possibly a breakout and coming back. And I was thinking we would come back to the EMA. Now it ends up kind of stalling and then coming up. So then at that point, this is what I ended up doing. So I ended up getting filled on this red candle, and then I got was able to quickly get another one in there. But basically, I moved this up because when it rejected here, and at one point I was thinking I might actually take a loser here, because if you look at this, it basically went. I thought I was going to get a one tick failure, because you can see it only, or sorry, 1 point, a 4 tick failure, because I was here. My take profit, I think, was, where was it? On. Now I'm trying to remember. No, because I entered this one. My bad. Hold on. Misspoke. I misspoke a second ago. No. 7.5. I didn't get filled right there. I got filled on this next one. That's right. That's right. Okay. But was able to still get in and get another one here. So, sorry, that confused me for a second. I got filled on this green bar on this one, and then was still able to get in on this one on a limit is what I did. Sorry, I had to leave the chart for a little while so it wasn't fresh. But I ended up getting this one. It was a quick scalp, and then this one gave me my better entry, because at this point this was a safer one for me, because this is a first entry pullback, second entry short below this bar, and it was closing inside where I moved the range to. So I had moved the range to here. You did have to be aware that this could be the bottom of the range, because that's where it was previously. And if that did happen, it did reject for a second. So it did have me thinking, hey, maybe I did have the range in the right spot. But it ends up playing out. I let it play out, and it ended up working for me. Unfortunately, I actually had my runner set to the lows down here, and I was hoping that it was going to come down and tap the low. Because I was still thinking maybe we would come down and actually get the lows from these channels. It ended up not happening, and it just came back, so no big deal. But it ended up being a decent trade there, a double trade, get in here. This was the safer trade, and the scalp ended up working. All right, so then you end up coming down here. You get this slight uptrend working. So this rejects, and now you're thinking, okay, definitely this is the only time that we really didn't make a low, like a higher low on this kind of these moves. But then here you start to work this uptrend. And what I saw here was a pullback, first entry, pullback, second entry short, failure. So from this low, this is a failed second entry short. And it's basically, in some ways, a breakout pullback long. Because now you're seeing the range highs are becoming support, but it is choppy. It's not a perfect setup on that level, but it's a good trap. So I thought this was a safe trade, because even though it's not a perfect breakout pullback, like usually what you want to see is it breaks out, pulls back, and just goes. But instead, this one broke out, pulled back in, broke out again, and then pulled back and went. So, but because of that, you get a trap. and it traps all these shorts who tried to short right here. They all just get trapped. It goes long, and you're thinking maybe we go up to the open, and so that one ends up being decent. You don't get a runner though because it stops you out on these wicks coming back, so you only get a scalp out of it again. And now I hadn't been looking at this, but that one came up and gave us a broke back in onto the range, and finally it looks like we're breaking out and actually testing the overnight highs. So looks like there's actually a channel working here. I wasn't really paying attention to this, but possibly that might fit like that. Something like that. That looks decent. Uh, because this from over here from the that's probably unsustainable as a channel. It's really steep. But it could be this wider one in play. It's hard to know for sure how this is going to actually play out. The challenge with these is that when these happen sometimes, it could just be the break of this channel and then a test up. And so what I'm thinking here, it visually looks like two measured legs. So it's possible that this is going to top out up here pretty soon, somewhere around that level, which would make sense to me based on if you look at yesterday's price action, that's basically those highs. So it would make sense to me if it ends up kind of topping out up here somewhere on kind of like a measured move like that. It's hard to say for sure. I'm not trading anymore today, but it actually does look like the tight channel could be the one that's holding up here. I'm just gonna do that so you can see the tight channel. Every time, it always tries to do that on me. So annoying. Just like tries to move on me. All right, let's just tighten that a bit. Something like that. Possibly. I mean, I think realistically, that channel is it's probably from this low. That's kind of the edge of the swing there. Something like this. And then through, I kind of use this close. And then, and it's possible that it's a little wider, but I doubt it. To me, it looks like it fits pretty nice through that close right there. And then this probably... So it's possible this is what we're going to get, and we're going to end up getting a measured move here. Doesn't really look like there's much setups here, unfortunately. Like, there's a higher low there, but you're a doji right below the EMA. You don't really have any setups here. You could see this as a double bottom, and you can count first entry short, pull back, second entry short, but you're now longing into the highs, so that's not great either. We don't need this white line anymore. So let's see if just because we're still on, I'm just going to see if this hits the measured move in real time. And I guess I can leave on the other possible trend line that we had drawn that was something like this. We could just leave it on just to see if it ends up playing out better than the other one. Okay, there's the measured move. Is it going to keep going? Okay, it's still going with some pretty serious aggression. At this point, you'd have to widen this channel to make it fit if this is not an overshoot. That doesn't look right to me at all. It doesn't really capture it very well. So I think that it's probably something like this tight channel here that you have to kind of see this as. And again, that could have been an overshoot, or this could be two-tiered and it could be like that. But that was a pretty bullish candle. This could end up just quickly rejecting. It's going to give you a double top there possibly. But yeah, that's the measured move as it played out. So I would expect here, if we zoom out, you kind of always thought that we could break out to the upside with how bullish the bias has been on this range. But still, most breakouts are going to fail. So I wouldn't be surprised if this comes back and tests this level, comes back near the EMA right here. They're both down here. You're probably going to have a pullback at some point, even if it is going to go higher. It's a Friday, so anything can happen. The volume's been thin, so they might give it a nice bullish close. It does look like looking pretty bullish here. This bar could end up coming up towards those closes on the daily up here, but there's definitely going to be some resistance as it comes through that area, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens. Again, I'm done for the day. I actually ended pretty early today, so I'm going to wrap it up for the week, and I'll see you next week.